A lot of people think that this means you have to start some nonprofit, like, help
Yep.
orphans or something. You could be like cooking for your friends, and that's completely fine. So just think about contribution in a more holistic way.
Chào mừng tất cả các bạn đến với tập mới của Sunny Valley Podcast, thung lũng nắng, nơi chúng mình cùng lắng nghe những câu chuyện thật, những hành trình truyền cảm hứng và những câu hỏi nuôi dưỡng thân, tâm, trí. Hôm nay, mình rất vui khi được trò chuyện cùng chị Cát Thư, một trong những người đã đi trước, đã mở đường và âm thầm góp phần giữ gìn cho UWC luôn sống động trong cộng đồng Việt Nam. Chị từng học ở UWC Costa Rica và theo đuổi ngành kỹ thuật cơ khí, năng lượng và phát triển quốc tế tại Đại học MIT. Nhưng hơn cả bằng cấp hay danh xưng, điều mình luôn cảm nhận từ chị Cát đó là sự chân thành, tận tụy và suy tư sâu sắc. Hôm nay mình mong là các bạn, các em dù đang chuẩn bị để apply cho UWC hay đang tìm hướng đi riêng cho mình, sẽ tìm thấy một chút gì đó đồng cảm trong cuộc trò chuyện này. Chị Cát Thư, welcome to the show.
Great. Thank you so much, Chikat, for joining podcast, Sunny Valley podcast. Really appreciate your time. I think my purpose for the whole podcast is to have conversation with UWC alum and then share this to the students so that they have an understanding of, hey, how was UWC for the alum and how has their journey been since living UWC. So you were among the first Vietnamese students in UWC Costa Rica. How was your experience there?
Yeah, so not only was I the first Vietnamese student in UWC Costa Rica, but I was also among the first UWC students at UWC Costa Rica, period, because my class was the very first class as for the school as the UWC. Okay, so before that, it was an SOS school. So I would say that it was atypical of any UWC experience. Really, you don't get to be the first class very often. There's only so many first classes. And so we didn't have any second year, for one thing. We only had SOS students that had been there for a really long time. And they mostly spoke Spanish. I mean, technically the school was bilingual, but most of the UWC students didn't speak any Spanish. Right? So we didn't connect very well with the SOS kids, I would say. But at the same time, we also got to define what it was like to be a UWC. And that was part of, and there was good things and bad things about that, right? And I really liked it when I reflected back on that experience. No one really knew what you were supposed to do at the UWC, so we had to figure out a lot of stuff on the fly. But at the same time, we defined a lot of the traditions how the school still had to this day, I think. So I think that was nice.
Yeah, great. And a lot of students usually ask questions about, hey, the facility in Costa Rica and some other schools are not as good as, say, in the US or Pearson. What would you say about that?
Well, it's hard for me to compare because I don't have any experience with US high schools. And I visited the other UWCs a fair amount by this time. And some of them are definitely better than others in terms of facilities. You mentioned Pearson. Pearson has nothing over Hong Kong. Hong Kong has such access.
Yeah, we don't have much, but somehow people usually imagine that it's nice there, but it's actually not. When I was there, so I think my question was more about: do you think the facilities will impact the experience they have there when spending time with friends from different countries and also learning the IB program?
I think it really depends on what you're looking for. I think the Costa Rica, for example, definitely doesn't have as many facilities, amenities as other schools. Even other non-UWC schools. And I mean, I'm sure, as you know, having worked on the committee, like when we assign students in schools, like we take this into account as well. I think again, it really depends on what you're looking for. You know, if you're really, for example, if you're someone who really has to continue with their swimming, like as a sport, for example, um, we won't send that student to Costa Rica because Costa Rica doesn't have a swimming pool.
Mm,
And at the same time, I also think though, like the thing that makes UWC really stand out is the student population from many different countries and background.
yeah.
And to be honest, you don't really need like fancy facilities to take advantage of that. Right. And I think like for this that's what I meant for the right kind of like student, if that's what you're looking for, you will be able to get a lot out of the experience regardless of what else is around you.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And my next question will be more about the challenges that you have there. I think it's important for students to know, like, hey, when you go there, it's not just like fun, and there will be challenges that they will need to learn how to deal with and overcome. And what were those for you, and how you learned to overcome?
Okay, well, so we just spoke about facilities. I feel like I have to say something about it first before going to like the actual challenges. But to me, facilities was not a challenge at all. Like it was like nowadays people look at Costa Rica and they think that, oh, there's nothing there. But to me at the time, like coming from like a small town, it had many more things than I did have back home. So to me that was like fancy. Yeah. And but the actual challenges that I did have, I mean, it's actually been so long ago, so I can't really say anything. But I remember having a lot of trouble, like making friends from different backgrounds. So, and especially for the first generation of a school of UWC, we didn't have any second year to help us like adapt. So naturally, we just kind of divided ourselves into groups according to interest, and it just happened to be, you relate better to people from your same background. So as a school, actually, as the whole school, we had a lot of like different cliques, just based on ethnicity. So you have all the Asians hanging out together, you have all the Europeans hanging out together, and to me, I made some friends in the Asian groups, but I did not have any other friends, not very many anyway, outside of that. And that continued into my second year. But on the other hand, you gotta find your friend groups in the most unexpected places. Like to me, that was with most of the teachers and another student, because we started playing in a band. And as a teenager, I remember having really poor social skills. So I didn't talk about myself. I didn't know how to ask other people about themselves. But playing music, that's something I could do.
Wow, that is great. So, what kind of band was it?
It started out as a Beatles tribute band, but since we were in Central America, we also played a lot of Latin music.
Okay, is that very nice? So I think the tip that someone can get from here is that join different activities that other people find interesting, and you yourself find interesting as well, and then gradually you will form friendship from the mutual interest.
Definitely. And, knowing the kind of people that usually apply to the program, I don't think that like our students will have problems with this, right? But I guess here's a good place to say, because as you also know, having been on the committee, we get a lot of questions about people who feel like they are more introverted, right? And they feel like they don't really stand out. They can't really show themselves in a group. And when, as you can see, like we accept all kinds of people into the program, and even though you feel like you yourself may be fairly introverted, you will find a way to adapt.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And then in terms of academics, what did you take in the IB, and tell me more about your choices.
So I think it took let's see. I never changed what I took actually for the whole 2 years. So there was for higher level I had economics, math,
Yep.
and physics. I think that was the science. And then I also sort of took further math as well, but it was self-taught because we didn't have enough students interested in further math to make it a whole class. There was only me actually.
Oh wow.
And then and then for standard level, I took English A1, so that's English as the first language, like English literature. I'm just clarifying because I think the system is different now. It's not called English A1 anymore or something. But like first language literature. That's my. I didn't teach. I didn't take Vietnamese self-taught. So for foreign language, I had Spanish B. Everyone had to take Spanish B actually, even if you didn't speak Spanish before. The idea is that being in a Spanish-speaking country, you will very quickly learn Spanish. So everyone started with Spanish B. And then I had French, I think.
Yeah. Oh wow. So that's quite diverse. I think it's nice that you started to learn Spanish when you were there in UWC.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's just really interesting. So I guess the next question will be on the journey after UWC. Where did you go and how was your journey after UWC up to now?
After UWC, so I did my undergrad at MIT. I was in mechanical engineering and energy studies, which I've never worked as a mechanical engineer a day in my life. Never really needed to use that knowledge either. But then after graduating, I started working at MIT still for 2 more years at the nuclear reactor lab. Then after that, I had 2 years in Vietnam, very quickly in tech. So that brought us to 2016. And after 2016, I moved back to the US and have been working in tech ever since.
Yeah. And then so MIT, and then after that you went back Vietnam for 2 years and then went back to US. And I know that you have been working in a longevity project. Can you share with us more about that?
Since 2020-ish.
Yep.
So at the time, I still was working full time as a software engineer. And at the same time, I was also participating part time in this project called VitaDAO. And
Yeah.
it was not my first exposure to longevity, but it was the first time that I actually did work in the area. And I guess what VitaDAO does is that we fund longevity projects, like early stage research projects. And by early stage, I mean like really early. So science is expensive, right? If you want to bring a therapy into market, that usually, I mean, the saying is that it usually takes 10 years and about $1 billion. And so in the grand scheme of things, we were talking about like the very first dollars into the project here. So, projects where like 500K will make a big difference and we'll be there like startup. So that's the DAO's funding philosophy. And then I did that for like a few years, maybe 2-3 years. And recently have been more focused on working on like directly for a project. So we call it direct work as opposed to like investment work. Right? And there's not a lot of I can share about that. But I'm doing a mix of learning how to work in a wet lab, but also like computational biology. Just coming from a computation background, right? That's still my main work, but the wet lab work has been really complementary to my ability to like understand what I'm doing and so contribute to the project more.
I see. And then I'm interested in why longevity. What made you interested in that?
Well, this goes far back, really. So when I was in college, at MIT, right? I was dating this guy for a while, and he was a bioengineering major, and he likes to say, like, really like to say that the only thing worth working on is anti-aging. Unfortunately, he didn't really walk the talk. You know, he started working for Google and had been working with Google ever since. But that was where it started, right? And then when I moved to the Bay Area, um, there's a large social group surrounding longevity at this time. So back when I was in college, actually, it wasn't even called longevity. Everyone called it anti-aging. Right? And then longevity, I think, is a term that was popularized a little bit later. Um, so when in 2016 until I guess 2020 was, you know, what we talked about. I was largely in the social group that were very interested in longevity, with some people working in longevity, but I myself wasn't working on it until 2020.
Okay, so peer pressure, I guess. Great. And then, so generally, it seems like you have explored really a lot of wide range of topics since you left UWC and currently working in longevity. I also remember in our last conversation, you said that you are starting to working on a book. Any chances you could share with us more about the book's topic and when you plan to launch it?
I would love to share. The issue is I don't even know actually what the topic like what the topic is. I mean, it's about so I guess that the short answer is there's not really a short answer to this question, right? Like you know, like if this is a book that I have completed, I will have like a perfect like one sentence blurb for you with, like, you know, a few paragraphs back cover, like what it's about. Unfortunately, we're not there yet, but as I'm working on it, I mean, it starts out about like you know, having worked in longevity for a while, especially with Vita now, right? You know, being an investor, I can see why people really like being an investor. You know, like you have money around, everyone wants to talk to you, everyone invites you to a bunch of things. It's sort of a glamorous like life. So anyway, so I had been living that life for a few years. So and it felt kind of fun. And that was originally I wanted to write about the sort of experience being in that, but like with a longevity community, right? And then how people in this space thinks about this topic and what motivates them to work and all the crazy things that happen when these people gather. So it sort of started with that, just like telling stories from that time. But then, you know, there's also a human element to this too, because I don't know. I think you know, I've worked in a lot of different industries, but I think this industry is one where people have almost everyone has some opinion to it. And a lot of the time, the opinions aren't all that like original. I would say like it's highly predictable what kind of objection people would have to longevity. Usually, it's like, oh, this is great. I want this because I have some family members who have had, you know, some kind of disability, some kind of like healthcare issues, and or like my dad died. I would like him to be around more, you know, things like that. But actually, most of the time, people have some sort of like moral objection to people living longer. And I mean, I don't want to minimize those objections, of course. And some of them are good objections, but to be honest, it's all very predictable. And I think a lot of it stems from kind of a misunderstanding of why people in longevity works in longevity, right? I think there's a highly human like element to people's motivation. And unfortunately, though, you know, people who are very scientifically minded, they're also not very good storytellers. And so I feel like there are better stories to be told here.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to put that into the book as well. So, there are a few more things, but I think that those are the two main things.
Okay, I think we can leave it there and then wait until you publish the book. And yeah, we'd be excited to learn more about that. Where do you see your work in longevity in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, it will be pretty much like heads down time for me, like working on like direct work, meaning like the actual like science. Um,
Yeah.
so there's not a lot we can say about that. Unfortunately, it's still a stealth company. But I guess the other part of this that I could say is that like I work with some people who do community work in this industry, right? So some long-term friends of mine run the longevity biotech fellowship. They get new people into longevity by bringing them into a 1 week camp, like in person, and then an online program. And I highly recommend this program. I will continue working with them and promote their work. And then a friend and I are also working on sort of having an introductory materials for people who are interested in working in this field as well. So we're composing materials in a more friendly way. I don't know if you've taken biology in high school or in college, but I think biology, the way it's taught in school, kind of sucks. And we think we could do a lot better. And so that's what we're trying to do, just making it better.
Great. Thanks for sharing. I guess the last question from me would be, what is the impact that you want to have in the world?
To be honest, I don't really think about that question. I mean, I do care a lot about having impact, but I think I guess the thing about the question is that it's very egocentric, right? And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it's just like, what, like the focus is more like, what do you want to leave for the world, right? To me, it's more like, what can I do that the world needs, right? I think it's more like that.
Okay, that's
And it's
very good. Yeah, I think that answer is very different from what I have received from other guests, where people talk a lot
well,
more about what they like to do to share and then help others.
Well, I guess it's like, so I always say like it's not really a criticism. It's just like I just found a question a little bit hard to answer because of the frames that
Yeah.
it presented to me. Because I can tell you something now. For example, because we've been talking about longevity a lot. I could answer. For example, say the impact I wanted to have on the world is that like I saw such and such disease extending life by 10 years or so. But I mean, it's not really about what I want to do for the world in that case, right? I think like this is what the world needs. And I guess, and I guess to extend this a little bit more, the reason why like that, my mind went there is because throughout like my many years of working, I have had many things that I wanted to do for the world, right? And it keeps changing, right? Like if you asked me this 10 years ago, I would say that, what I want to do for the world is this, but it's not really what I'm doing right now, so I think it,
Yes.
and then, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that I understand. Well, when you share that, I just realized that I have been doing the same, which is like changing from different industries to different one. Because what I thought I would do 10 years ago is so different now. Like I would not imagine myself like coming back Vietnam.
Yeah, and I think it's a good distinction to make. I think personally, I mean, maybe someone would thought that it's pedantic, right? But to me, when you say,
Yeah.
well, not just you personally, but when someone say like the impact that I want to have is that like there's responsibilities in those words, I think, right?
Yes. Yes.
And when you consider, but that's not the right question to be asking. What you really want to be considered is what the world needs. And so when your answer to the question of what does the world needs changes, you want to be able to change what you do without any sense of responsibility to your previous answer. So that's where
Yeah.
I'm coming from.
Yeah, I see. And then so the application process for next year is coming in 1 or 2 months. What is the advice that you want to share with the students who are applying to UWC this year?
It's so funny because I really don't know. Like when I was applying to college, like we came from a place of like you have to kind of dig deep and write good essays, right?
Yeah,
But I don't know
right.
how it is nowadays. Especially with like ChatGPT and all of these other like generative tools. So really, um, I mean, okay, if you're applying this year, but I don't know, like you the only thing that you could do is write a better application, right? So, and I guess just from my experience reading applications, students think
Yeah.
that we care about a lot of things that we don't care about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like how to say this? Like we don't really care about like what kind of awards you have gotten unless it's really impressive, you know. Um, and that you don't need to like scan all of your like banking and the things that we really care about. So I think it's like just kind of understanding who you are as a person. And I think sometimes the students also take this advice a little bit too literally. But like, we do want to know what you at the moment thinks that you want to do for the world, and we know that it will change, as you grow and continue your journey. But we also need to get a sense of like what you want to do at the moment, right? So and how you want to contribute to your community, for example. And a lot of people think that this means you have to start some nonprofit, like help
Yep, yep.
orphans or something. I like you could be like cooking for your friends, and that's completely fine. So just think about contribution in a more holistic way.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember seeing a lot of applications from the past few years that who apply and get rejected and decided to come back and clearly saw the growth that they have developed over the few years. Great. Thank you so much for your time.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã dành thời gian lắng nghe Sunny Valley thung lũng nắng. Nếu bạn thấy tập này hữu ích, đừng quên chia sẻ cho người thân yêu và để lại đánh giá để podcast được lan tỏa xa hơn nhé. Hẹn gặp lại các bạn vào tuần sau. Chúc các bạn luôn bình an, đầy năng lượng và sống đúng với chính mình.